Hello and welcome to a very special video here on the JVSCP channel. Today we're going to be reading the first chapter of this book, There Is No Antimemetics Division, by author Quantum, or qntm. This is a longer narrative story that was originally published on the SCP wiki in several parts that you could follow as they came out, and eventually Quantum released it as a self-published book, which I bought and I read it and I really enjoyed it, so I thought, why not start this as sort of like a series? So I'm thinking that for a while now, what we're gonna do is that every other video is gonna be a chapter out of this book. It's also gonna have its own playlist and all of that, and we'll work through it together. And don't worry, maybe you're out there thinking that some fucking book you haven't heard about is not what you came to this channel for, but I promise you, if you're into SCP stuff, I mean, it's an SCP book. You're gonna like it. It's good. So for a few weeks, or however long it takes to get through this book, every other week is gonna be a chapter, and every other week is gonna be a normal video with just some random SCP readings. So that's what's gonna happen going forward. Sorry for the long, rambly intro. That's kind of what we do here. I really hope you enjoy. You can't see the book because of the shitty fake green screen effect, but I hope you're gonna enjoy. Let's get started. Oh, right, before we do, it starts with just the SCP entry for SCP-55. That's sort of like a prologue, and then it goes into Chapter 1. And I noticed that the book doesn't list it where I would normally say it, so I'll just say it right now that SCP-055 was written by Quantum, who also wrote this book, and Captain Bellman. Which also makes this book extra cool, because that means that it's essentially, canon, because it's written by the same guy who made SCP-55, which was a very early SCP and I think started the whole anti-meme idea. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. You'll get it soon enough. Let's get started. SCP-055. Object Class Keter. Special Containment Procedures. Object is kept within a 5 by 5 by 2.5 meters square room constructed of cement, with a Faraday cage surrounding the cement walls. Access via a heavy containment door measuring 2 by 2.5 meters constructed on bearings to ensure door closes and locks automatically unless held open deliberately. Security guards are not to be posted outside of SCP-55's room. It is further advised that all personnel maintaining or studying other SCP objects in the vicinity try to maintain a distance of at least 50 meters from the geometric center of the room, as long as this is reasonably practical. Description. Information about SCP-55's physical appearance, as well as its nature, behavior, and origins, is self-classifying. To clarify, how Site-19 originally acquired SCP-55 is unknown. When SCP-55 was obtained and by whom is unknown. SCP-55's physical appearance is unknown. It is not indescribable or invisible. Individuals are perfectly capable of entering 55's container and observing it, taking mental or written notes, making sketches, taking photographs, and even making audio/video recordings. An extensive log of such observations is on file. However, information about SCP-55's physical appearance leaks out of a human mind soon after such an observation. Individuals tasked with describing SCP-55 afterwards find their minds wandering and lose interest in the task. Individuals tasked with sketching a copy of a photograph of SCP-55 are unable to remember what the photograph looks like, as are researchers overseeing these tests. Security personnel who have observed SCP-55 via closed-circuit television cameras emerge after a full shift exhausted and effectively amnesiac about the events of the previous hours. Who authorized the construction of SCP-55's containment room, why it was constructed in this way, or what the purpose of the described containment procedures may be are all unknown. Despite 055's container being easily accessible, all personnel at Site-19 claim no knowledge of SCP-55's existence when challenged. All these facts are periodically rediscovered, usually by chance readers of this file, causing a great deal of alarm. This state of concern lasts minutes at most before the matter is simply forgotten about. A great deal of scientific data has been recorded from SCP-55 but cannot be studied. At least one attempt has been made to destroy SCP-55 or possibly move it from containment at Site-19 to another site, meeting failure for reasons unknown. SCP-55 may present a major physical threat and indeed may have killed many hundreds of personnel, and we would not know it. Certainly it presents a gigantic memetic/mental threat, hence its Keter classification. Document 055-1. An analysis of SCP-55. The author puts forward the hypothesis that SCP-55 was never formally acquired by and is in fact an autonomous or remotely controlled agent, inserted at Site-19 by an unidentified third party for one or all of the following purposes: to silently observe or interfere with activities at Site-19, to silently observe or interfere with activities at other SCP locations, to silently observe or interfere with activities of humanity worldwide, to silently observe or interfere with other SCP objects, to silently observe or interfere with. No action to counter any of these potential threats is suggested, or indeed, theoretically, possible. And that's SCP-55, which serves sort of like a prologue to the book. And now we begin at Chapter 1. We need to talk about 55. Can I smoke? This time the receptionist narrowed her eyes at Marion. No, you can't smoke anywhere on Site 200. Just because it's an administration building doesn't mean we don't have lungs. Or labor law. Marion notices the exasperation on the young woman's face. I've asked you that before, haven't I? Twice in the last quarter hour, the receptionist says. You must really need a smoke. She's genuinely puzzled at the repeated question, and she's doing a bad job of concealing her puzzlement. You think this is like Memento, don't you? Marion offers, charitably. You think I have no long-term memory, and if I stay in one place for too long, I forget why I'm there. The receptionist is only just old enough to remember that film. I guess? Marion smiles sympathetically and shakes her head. It's nothing so simple. Minutes pass. She toys obsessively with her lighter. She's turning 50 this year and slowly graying, well on her way out of petite towards little old lady. In her bag, her phone beeps because it's time for a pill, but she tells it to remind her later. There is a slight tremble in her fingers, but that's not age-based infirmity, that's just ordinary nerves. She's nervous because she's here to meet an 05, and 05s are scary. For those that don't know, the 05 Council is like the council of, I guess, the big bosses at SCP. They kind of make the big decisions, and yeah, they're your supervisor, essentially. 05s never want to see you for a small thing. It's the end of the world or nothing. Finally, 40 minutes late, the door to the inner office opens. 4 or 5 high-ranked Foundationers spill out, carrying laptops or briefcases. As a group, they head straight past reception and out to cars which are waiting. Marion recognizes a few of the faces, the Site-19 site director, the head recruiter for Western Europe. None of them glance in her direction. Once they're gone, 058's assistant pokes his head around the door. He's 20-something, improbably youthful, like a teenager stuffed into one of his dad's business shirts. His haircut is barely regulation. In one hand he holds a tablet computer showing his boss's day planner. It's packed. The man evidently does not sleep. Marion, you can come through now. The office door closes behind them with an unusually heavy mechanical clunk, as if the whole thing is part of a machine built into the office walls. While Marion takes the indicated chair and sets her bag down, the assistant turns and does some confusing additional things to the door, causing it to make several further strange noises. O5s have non-trivial privacy and security requirements. The office is spacious, but somehow contrives to be dark despite two big corners of windows and broad daylight outside. The walls are all bookshelves and dark wood paneling, perfectly stylish, but a style from the 90s, a little worn and not yet old enough to be fashionable again. As for the fellow behind the desk, well, an O5 never looks like you imagine. Marion takes a deep breath. So what's the topic? All I got was the meeting invitation, no agenda or subject. I mean, an O5 says jump, you jump, but... Looking to her right, she notices that the assistant, without saying anything or making any undue noise, has set his tablet down on a table, produced a gun, and aimed it at her head. Marion stops talking. She sits still in her chair for a little while, absorbing the change of pace, letting her heart rate rise to a hummingbird's, and then start to flatten again. Okay, she hazards. She licks her lips and grips the armrests, otherwise staying perfectly still, waiting for another prompt. The assistant's face is totally neutral now, like this is just how meetings go. Maybe it is for people up here.
Who are you?
058 asks her. Marion blinks. What? Oh God.
Let me rephrase.
058 says.
Marion Wheeler, 49, with loving husband and 2 boys in tow, likes camping, hiking, and ornithology. Boring mother with perfect airtight background and financials as far back as we can examine. And you've got full foundation credentials, which we've never issued, including access to a list of installations and rooms which some of these locations don't exist or were torn down decades ago. At least one hasn't been built yet you've got the front door key. That's before we get to your SCP access control list, which I can only term as egregious. So you're a spy, and your objectives are misaligned with ours, and Clay wanted to cut XI3 loose on you, but I was able to bring him around. I talked him into a face-to-face. I thought there was a slim chance that if we locked you in a bomb-proof room and asked politely, you'd have the good sense to spare yourself the rest.
Marion has long since stopped listening. You dullard, she says. Now she can finally speak. I'm your chief of antimemetics. We don't have an antimemetics division, Clay says. Yes, you do. We do. 058 says,
we have a memetics division, a telecontainment division, fire services, Ops A, Ops B personnel, D personnel, and 24 others. We don't have an antimemetics division.
Do we have an irony division? Marion asks. She hesitates hopefully. No? All right. Well, try this. Why do you think the antimemetics division would show up in the listing? This is just a cover story, Clay says to 058, not taking his eyes off Marion. It's a good one, but she had it worked out in advance.
Clay, loose the piece,
says the 05. Grudgingly, Clay does so. Marion relaxes fractionally. There are SCPs with dangerous memetic properties, she says. There are contagious concepts which require containment just like any physical threat. They get inside your head and ride your mind to reach other minds, right?
Right,
058 says. He could name a score of SCPs fitting this description without even thinking. There are SCPs with anti-memetic properties, Marion goes on. There are ideas which cannot be spread. There are entities and phenomena which harvest and consume information, particularly information about themselves. You take a Polaroid photo of one, it'll never develop. You write a description down with pen and paper and hand it to someone, but what you've written turns out to be hieroglyphs, and nobody can understand them. Not even you. You can look directly at one, and it won't even be invisible, but you'll still perceive nothing there. Dreams you can't hold on to and secrets you can never share. and lies and living conspiracies. It's conceptual subculture of ideas consuming other ideas and sometimes segments of reality. Sometimes people. Which makes them a threat. That's all there is to it, really. Anti-memes are dangerous and we don't understand them. Therefore, they're part of the problem. Hence, my division. We can do the sideways thinking that's needed to combat something which can literally eat your combat training. 058 stares back at her for a long moment. Clay fidgets, disliking and distrusting the story, but the 05 seems more open to the concept.
Name one,
He says.
Name an antimemetic SCP.
SCP-055, Marion says promptly. There is no SCP-055, Clay retorts. Again, yes there is, Marion says. There isn't, Clay asserts. SCP numbers aren't assigned sequentially. There are gaps. That number hasn't been assigned. It's not superstition. We have enough to be concerned about without arbitrary numerological mysticism. We have SCP-666 and SCP-013, but there's no SCP-001, and there's no SCP-055.
Clay,
058 says.
you should look at this.
He turns his monitor so Clay can see the file that he has just retrieved. Clay bends over and reads it from top to bottom. Stunned, he scrolls back and reads it all a second time. But
The file's dated from 2008.
058 says.
It's got all the right flags and signatures. It's keyed and coded. It's real.
You've seen this before? Clay asks him.
Never in my life.
058 says.
As far as I can remember anyway. On the other hand, if the content is accurate, both of us have probably seen it dozens of times.
Clay glares at Marion. This isn't possible. Marion nearly spits. For Christ's sake, Clay, how long have you been working here? But if this SCP is this powerful, he begins. Yes?
Who wrote the file?
The 05 finishes.
And for that matter, how do you, Mrs. Wheeler, retain knowledge of any of this?
The file was written by a man named Dr. Bartholomew Hughes, Marion says. He's dead.
What happened to him?
You don't want to know. There's a long pause while both 058 and his assistant react to this. In fact, they pass through a long, discrete sequence of reactions. Indignation at the seeming rudeness, confusion at Wheeler's incaution in front of sinister superiors, surprise at the magnitude of the claim, pure disbelief, comprehension, and finally, horror.
What
05 asks carefully.
would happen if we did know?
It would happen to you as well, Marion says levelly. As for your other question, we manage that pharmaceutically. You know we have Class A amnestics for people who very badly need to forget things? Of course you do. Who could forget about Class A amnestics? Well, in antimemetics we have a different pill for people who need to remember things that would otherwise be impossible to remember. Nestics. Class W, X, Y, and Z. Same Greek root as the word mnemonic. The M is silent. In her bag, her phone beeps again. With a nod of approval from the 05, Marion reaches into her bag and turns her phone off, acknowledging the prompt this time instead of postponing it. She pulls a blister pack from another pocket and pops a pill out. It's hexagonal and green. She holds it up and is satisfied to see a flicker of recognition on 058's face. He's beginning to put it back together. Marion says, "These are Class W nestics, the weakest, suitable for continual use. 2 pills per day. Go down to the site pharmacy and ask. The pharmacist will claim they don't stock any such thing. They're misremembering. Tell them to double check." 058 sighs.
And now I think I get it. I see why we're having this conversation at all.
"Yes," Marion says, popping a second pill out and handing it over to him. "It's because you missed a dose. You're supposed to be on these, the same as me and everybody on my staff. It's the only way we can work. You forgot to take a pill, and then you forgot all the information that the pills were helping you retain. You forgot why you were taking them, who gave them to you, where to get more. You forgot about me and my entire department. And now I have to bring you up to speed.
And if I take this,
058 says,
I'll remember this whole conversation and we won't have it again.
Hopefully not, Marion says. Clay pipes up. Should I be taking those?
Sorry, kiddo,
058 says.
Need to know. Maybe when you're an 05 yourself.
He swallows the pill. Marion swallows hers too.
So what is SCP-55?
058 asks. SCP-55 is nothing, Marion says, now relaxing entirely. SCP-55 is, as described in the file, a powerful information autosuppressor. As far as experimentation has uncovered, it can only be defined in negative terms. We can only record what it isn't. We know it isn't safe or Euclid. We know it isn't round or square or green or silver. We know it isn't stupid. And we know it isn't alone. But we do know that it's weak. It's weak because it's the only antimemetic agent in our possession which has a physical entry in the files. We have paper records of the thing. We have containment procedures. It's not safe, which means it's dangerous, but it's contained. 058 blinks.
You have procedures. Where?
Marion points at her head.
Then how many other anti-memes are there? How much more dangerous do they get?
10 that I know of, Marion says. Statistically, probably at least 5 more that I don't know of. This does not count the antimemetic entities freely roaming the halls, not under containment. There are at least 2 in this room with us right now. Don't look. I said don't look. It's pointless. 058 does an impressive job of controlling himself, keeping his attention focused on Marion. Clay doesn't fare so well, and quickly sweeps the whole room, even checking behind his back. Making an ass of himself, essentially. He finds nothing. He looks baffled. There is an invisible monster which follows me around and likes to eat my memories, Marion explains patiently. SCP-4987. Don't look it up, it's not there. I've learned to manage with it. It's like a demanding pet. I produce tasty memories on purpose so it doesn't eat something important, like my passwords or how to make coffee. And what's the other one? Clay asks. With another nod from 058, Marion goes to her bag again. This time she pulls out a gun and shoots Clay twice in the heart. More aghast than in pain, Clay collapses sharply against the bookcase behind him, pulling his head around to face Marion. He manages, "How did you know?" Marion stands, aims more carefully, and shoots him a third time, this time in the head. 058 again does an impressive job of not reacting.
That's Clay's gun.
He deadpans.
You stole it from him.
It's tricky to steal a firearm this heavy from someone without them noticing, Marion explains, unloading it and carefully setting it down. But stealing a firearm and then stealing their memory of the theft is a little easier. Like I said, a pet. Some pets are dumb enough that they can be trained.
Yes,
058 says evenly.
That much I'd guessed. But why?
Because you were supposed to be taking Class W Nestics, Marion says. You can't skip a dose of Class W Nestics. I've tried. You can postpone a dose, but you can't forget unless someone actively prevents you from taking it. There's only one person who could get close enough to you to do that, and that's your assistants. And remember when I asked him how long he'd been working here?
He didn't answer.
058 says.
I thought you were being rhetorical.
He doesn't work here, Marion says. He's an anti-meme. Since when do you have an assistant? You don't have an assistant, Brent. Look at this office. It's got one desk. You've got a receptionist outside. She's the one who screens your calls and schedules your meetings. Where does Clay even sit? Where does he fit? Don't blame yourself. You're human, and these things are redaction incarnate. You need to think like a space alien to get around them. 058 asks a question which in any other workplace would be absurd.
Is he dead?
Maybe, Marion says. I can put his corpse in our research queue and we'll see what we can see when we open him up. There's a duality here, though. They're like parallel universes sharing the same space. It's conceptual versus concrete, figurative versus physical. It's very unusual for things to cross over. I don't know what Clay was, but he had a human body, which instantly makes him weird, even by our standards. As ever, the search for stalemate continues. I will let you know if we get any closer.
Any side effects of these pills?
058 asks. Nausea and dramatically increased risk of pancreatic cancer, Marion says. And very bad dreams. So that's the first chapter of There Is No Antimemetics Division. As you can probably tell, this book is gonna kinda revolve around themes of anti-memes, which I think it does a pretty good job at explaining what that is and how they work. But yeah, essentially, if you're confused, an anti-meme is something that just can't be remembered. Now, since I've read this book before now reading it again, I can tell you that it does kind of get a bit confusing at times and sort of, I guess, like theoretical or philosophical, but I think it does it in a very good way where it doesn't get just, you know, techno, jarble, garble, vague. Like it continues to reel you in even when it gets confusing. I hope that makes sense. Overall, I'm a big fan of this book. I really liked it when I read it, and the author in general. I've actually just started reading another book that they wrote, so I heavily recommend, you know, check the book out, pick it up from Amazon. It's cheap and it's self-published, and it would be really cool if we could, you know, support this author. Either you can read along with me as sort of like a book club. We'll be doing one chapter for each of these videos, so if you want to read it and then hear me read it again and see it as sort of like a, I don't know, semi-book club, even though we can't really discuss it, you know, then go ahead and do that. Or just pick it up and never read it just to support him. But regardless of what you do, I hope you stick around to follow the story all the way through. It goes to some pretty wild places, and I'll get to practice doing different voices and pronouncing difficult words, so that's gonna be fun. And on that note, you don't have to tell me in the comments like, hey, you know, this word is actually pronounced like that. I know, okay? I'm aware. But you can't teach this old dog to pronounce whatever word I can't pronounce. Whatever. Thank you for watching. Somewhere on screen right now should be our patrons. Thank you very much to you for supporting us. If you're not a patron and you want to be one, you want to support us, please follow the link somewhere on screen right now or in the description. We'd really appreciate it. I think we've got a very low, at least one very low tier you can get away for like $1 a month or something. And it really helps us out because these videos take a lot of time to make. This might be a record for weird rambly outro, but you know, just get used to it. That's how it's going to be when I go unscripted. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. And check out There Is No Antimemetics Division by Quantum or qntm. And hope to see you in the next video, whether it is another SCP reading or another chapter of the book in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.